special exhibition for us with the opportunity to talk about the health and the history of the Willamette River. I hope you'll join us for our second exhibition of spring term here at Clackamas Community College in the Alexander Gallery as well, with our spring student art show. And with that, I would like to introduce Michael Pouncil, who will begin with the land acknowledgement. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for being here. We'd like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional village site of the Multnomah, Cathlamet, and Klamath bands of Chinook, Tualatin Kaiapui, the Malawa, and many other tribes who've made their names and who made their homes along the Willamette River. The Multnomah are a band of Chinooks that lived in the area now known as Portland. We also acknowledge the systemic policy of genocide, relocation, and assimilation that impact many indigenous and Native American families to this day. We thank the descendants of these tribes for being the original stewards and protectors of these lands and waters since time immemorial. We are also honored to be guests upon these lands and waters. We honor and respect the elders who have stewarded this land since time immemorial. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Katie McFadden. I teach in the ceramics department. I want to welcome everyone and thank everyone for joining us. This is a rather unusual exhibition in the sense that it's really information about our river and the part of the river that is downriver, the North Reach. There is a lot of information that is available in this exhibit that talks about people who have been displaced, how land has been taken over and industrialized with rather difficult and complex fossil fuel projects. So the purpose, I think, of the group really is to acknowledge that this is native land and look at how, from time immemorial, rivers have been used. So the hope is that we can bring awareness for another kind of land use for our river, and that it will be clean and equitable and fair for all levels, all groups of peoples. So I want to thank everyone who's been involved with the Braided River campaign, and I especially want to thank Kate Simmons, who has worked so hard with coordinating all of this. And for the college to agree for this type of exhibition at the college. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Sarah Taylor, who is one of the founding people of the Braided River campaign.
Hi, I just want to, I live up in the North Reach, which is kind of where, if you haven't figured out, it's kind of where the Willamette reaches the Columbia and then heads out to the ocean. So a lot of what we're talking about here is how we're interconnected. So a lot of you live closer to the Clackamas. How many of you live pretty close to the Clackamas River? So the Clackamas River is deeply connected to this story. And a lot of the portraits that we chose to paint would be similar to some of the portraits that would be painted in this part of the river and on the Clackamas as well. You know, the indigenous fisher person, people who worked in industry, displacement. So these are themes not just in the North Reach, but down here in the lower Willamette and in the Clackamas, and indeed all over the country and in many places in the world. So we hope that you'll get to know these people. And I know that we deeply love and care for these paintings now. That seems crazy, but we've gotten to know them. And they're not always a real person, but they're based on a real person. And what we did is we took historic photographs and stories that people told us, and then we allowed different artists to interpret that person. And this was a little girl whose family came to Portland to work in the shipyards. And this is a picture of a little girl whose parents are working there, and she's in her this is her daycare center. So that's how we did it: historic photo, storytelling, and then these beautiful paintings, which we hope that, we'll keep making those. And so what I wanted to tell you about the Clackamas River is that the lower Willamette, every fish that comes down here to the lower Willamette, every fish that goes into the Clackamas has to go through the critical energy hub, which is where 90% or more of all our fossil fuels are stored on a fault line. So if something goes wrong in the North Reach, which is about 9 miles long, it will impact from Astoria all the ways down to here and up the Clackamas River. So we may say, oh, well, that's Portland, but actually what happens there would indeed impact your river as well. So we see this as a regional challenge. And the reason, to get back to the people, is when people decide that they're going to get rid of a group of people, like they got rid of the Chinook and the Clackamas and put them on reservations, and then also got rid of immigrants and people who had come to work, they want you to believe that this was an empty stretch of land, and so it didn't matter that they polluted it. It didn't matter that they put all this stuff there, because nobody was living there in the first place. So we are highlighting these people because we don't want them to be just, they never existed. So when you read their story, you're acknowledging that tens of thousands of people lived in that 9-mile stretch, and it wasn't just a vacant piece of land for the taking. So that's kind of how we came about this. Our goal is to get the fish down to your river. We're trying to get the fish from, the ocean all the ways to where you live and fish down here. That's our goal. And to do that, we're going to have to work hard in the next couple years. They're going to make a plan for that stretch of the river. And when we do that, I want to tell them, it is not just this 9 miles. You're impacting the people all the ways at the tippy end of Johnson Creek and the Clackamas River. So you can't just think about this area. You have to think about all the people impacted. So I hope that makes sense. And so our goal is climate, health, fish, clean air, and an Oregon that we can really be proud of. Fishing is an important part of our culture, and for the fish to get through, we're going to have to take care of them, because right now they have nowhere to go. They have to be able to hide in little cozy, cool water, which you have in the Clackamas River, a lot of, but that 9-mile stretch, we have very little. We can do it, though. How hard is it to build a cozy little place for a little baby salmonoid? Right? We can make little places for baby salmonoids, right? Doesn't seem that impossible. We can do more than that, but we can do it. And, and I think we're going to have to move forward with, determination. And we're hoping to put this gallery in other places and keep spreading the word that, we're going to have to fix this before we create damage that we will struggle to ever recover from. So we appreciate you being here. Hopefully you're in an art class, and we're kind of saying that art can be used for activism. You're going to also hear music. And so maybe one of your students is going to do a comic book for us. We'll see. And, so you can use your art for activism, which is what all of these artists did. So ask us questions, those of us with name tags on. We have a petition out there. Sign your name to the petition saying that we want this to transition from fossil fuels. We want a safe Oregon. And of course, climate change impacts people in other countries. And you must all know that, last year, or many years now, it seems like since COVID, I was in the Marshall Islands and, deeply impacted by climate change. So what we do in that area impacts us, impacts down here, and impacts nations, around the world. So thank you so much for being here. Anybody have a question right off that somebody wants to answer? We can answer? Can we finish? Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, there's more to do. Okay.
Yeah, I don't really know either. Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Feldman. I work with the Willamette River Advocacy Group. I've been an activist cleaning up the lower Willamette, helping to do that for many years now, and really important and, in its way, joyful work, as you will see on the activist wall. I wanted to share this as an intro from Kathleen Dean Moore, who is an OSU professor and a great steward of this region, this watershed, these watersheds. And this was published in Orion magazine in 2014. It's called Rules of the River. We are caught up in a river rushing toward a hot, stormy, and dangerous planet. The river is powered by huge amounts of money invested in mistakes that are dug into the very structure of the land. A tangled braid of fearful politicians, preoccupied consumers, reckless corporations, and bewildered children. Everyone in some odd way feeling helpless. Of course, we despair. How will we ever dam this flood? But we don't have to stop the river. Our work and the work of every person who loves this world, is to make one small deflection in complacency, a small obstruction to profits, a blockage to business as usual, then another and another to change the energy of the flood. As it swirls around these snags and subversions, the current will slow, lose power, eddy in new directions, and create new systems and structures that change its course forever. On these small islands, new ideas will grow, creating thickets of living things and lifeways we haven't yet imagined. This is the work of disruption. This is the work of radical imagination. This is the work of witness. This is the steadfast, conscientious refusal to let a hell-bent economy force us to row its boat. This is much better than stewing in the night. Thank you.
I'm Catherine Evolution. Our group is planning a zine, and it's going to contain stories of historical timeline. We're starting actually with the Missoula floods 13,000 years ago that broke a bunch of water and rocks through the area, and that's where the Columbia Gorge came from. And it also impacted the indigenous people who lived in this area at that time, 13,000 years ago. I'm going to read one of the little stories that we have in the zine, which we will be publishing. You can swing by and get a free copy once we get it together. This story, Mountain Men and Fashionable Women. The American beaver, state animal of Oregon and quintessential architect of wetlands and sloughs in the braided Willamette River region, has not always been regarded with such respect. The European mountain men, many French-speaking, arrived in the Northwest in the 18th century and slaughtered these peaceful herbivores for their glossy dark fur, popular in women's hats throughout Europe and the United States. Mountain men traded with local Native Americans to increase their wealth. After near extinction, the American beaver has been protected since 1931, and the hats fell out of fashion. In recent decades, the socially conscious have replaced dead animals with fake fur, produced from petroleum products. These indestructible fibers, along with other synthetics, may remain in the environment longer than the human species. Eventually, planet warming will lessen the need for garments to ward off winter's chill. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Judy, and I have the great pleasure of reading a poem that Kim Stafford sent to us today, since he could not be here in person. It's called Export Community. Excuse me, you are community. It's called Export Commodity. Sun lifts clouds from the sea. Lightning jabs sparks into the trees. Fire billows smoke into the wind. Rain drives soot into the earth. And earth thrusts vines into the sun. I send poisons into rivers. I send plastic into the sea. I send exhaust into the sky. I send guilt into my dreams. I send grief into my children's and grandchildren's lives. What's our remedy for all this foolishness? Let our lives be braided like the river, meditative in slow channels, attending to each willow as we think, wonder, notice, learn, witness, and act. Thank you.
So we have a great group of singers that are going to be singing for a while. So you can enjoy refreshments, keep looking at the exhibit, ask us questions, look at the video of the different artists, or just relax and enjoy really great music.
Thinking you're all that you got. Don't feel alone anymore. 'Cause when we're together, then you got a lot. But I am the river, you are the shore. And it goes on and on, watching the river run. Further and further from things that we've done, leaving them one by one, and we have just begun. Watching the river run, listening and learning and yearning, run, river, run. Winding and swirling and dancing along, we pass by the old willow tree, where lovers caress as we sing them our song. We sing together as we reach the sea. And it goes on and on, watching the river run. Further and further from things that we've done, leaving them one by one, and we have just begun. Watching the river run, listening and learning and yearning, run, river, run. And we have just begun. Watching the river run. Further and further from things that we've done, leaving them one by one. hot tub.
It's very echoey. You think it's